Good afternoon, everyone. So, today, as you are aware, we are working on implementing Scrum into our Star Wars RPG Saga Edition Compendium. But many of you probably don't know what Scrum is. So, this is just a brief overview as to what it is that we are going to be working with over the next couple of years. What is Scrum exactly? So, Scrum is an agile methodology that emphasizes a building a specific environment, an environment where we have a product owner that orders the work for a complex problem into product backlogs. We have Scrum teams that turn a selection of the work into an increment of value during a sprint. And then we also have the Scrum team and its stakeholders, which will inspect the results and adjust for the next sprint accordingly. And this process will repeat. I'll show you a diagram in a second that will describe visually what it is that we are talking about. But the structure is vague on purpose. And the reason is that we can manipulate the Scrum structure to suit our needs accordingly. And there are also several important values, however, that we need to consider when it comes to Scrum. And that is commitment. We need to be committed to the work that we are doing. We need to be focused on the work we are doing, but we also need to be open to feedback as well. You need to be respectful to others, and because we should be nice to people, and we should also be courageous. We shouldn't be afraid to take risks when it comes to designing something that might actually be very powerful in the end. So just to visualize what the Scrum process looks like, in at the beginning we have the planning and the system architecture. This is where you do your wireframes, you set up your UI experience, you design any initial mandatory requirements, allocate to different team members exactly what we need to construct when, etc. And then after that, there are numerous sprints. And we'll talk about a sprint in more detail as we go on. But the idea is that this is basically a cycle where you develop the thing that you are working on for that particular sprint. And then there is some wrap up. This might include some testing and uh, some analysis, or maybe some outstanding issue or review. And then eventually this will progress into overall general review and synopsis of where we are at the end of the sprint. And then there are some adjustments, which then in turn leads us into the next sprint. And these sprints continue over and over and over again until we reach the final phase of the Scrum, which is the closure phase. This is where we gather up what we still have outstanding at the end of the project, what we plan to do with the project in the future, and any other outstanding issues. So, there are three major points with Scrum. There are the developers. These are the people that actually are in charge of designing core pieces of the project. So, in the case of the Star Wars RPG Compendium, we are talking about the character creation interface. We're talking about the database that contains the force powers, any weapons like your lightsabers, the species throughout the Star Wars galaxy, the planets, and so forth. And developers in particular, they have several responsibilities. First, we need to create a plan for the sprint backlog. So we need to have some idea of where we need and want to be. We need to also instill quality by adhering to the definition of a definition of done. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. If it's good enough and it works, it functions exactly how you expect it to, don't spend unnecessary time in trying to enhance it further to make it do something extremely fancy when it's not necessarily a requirement. We need to adapt our plans each day towards whatever the sprint goal currently is, and we need to hold each other accountable as professionals. And also just be nice and thankful. It's nice and encouraging to hear a thank you from someone for working and assisting on a particular issue that you are having. Product owners are the second person on the team. Note that there is one person that is the product owner. And this is not necessarily to be confused with the actual end user. This is the person who is maximizing the value of the product. And they also are in charge of backlog management. So basically what this means is that they are developing and explicitly communicating the product goal. So if the goals are not clearly laid out, well then the product will likely not be what is desired. We'll end up accidentally creating something that is totally unrelated to what it is that the end user actually wants. Creating and clearly communicating these backlog items is also essential. The product backlog is simply a list of things that need to be done to improve the product. If they are not clearly stated, then that will result in confusion and again result in an answer that is actually not the answer that we are looking for. Ordering the product backlog items in terms of highest priority down is also necessary for the product owner, and ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and easily understood. If you don't understand something in the product backlog, don't be afraid to ask as well. And that's where the Scrum Master can come in. The Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring that everyone knows how Scrum works and that everything is flowing smoothly. So they report to basically everyone, and they ensure that everyone is following the so-called rules of Scrum. And this can, as far as reporting to the Scrum team, they're focused on teaching the team how to effectively implement Scrum, and also ensuring that any barriers are removed. They do a very similar thing with the product owner. They ensure that they assist in the development of the product backlog, and they ensure that they are serving as a bridge between the stakeholders and the product owner. And of course, with the organization as a whole, they ensure they have everything they need to do Scrum in order for them to work with the project, and also again they remove any barriers. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but Scrum's sprints are very short periods of time, no more than a month, where the work is actually accomplished. And the work is focused on achieving the product goals for that particular sprint, planning daily scrums, so these are like sprints that last only a day, review, retrospectives, and reflections. And when a sprint finishes, a new one begins, unless we're at the end of the project and in the closure phase. And once a sprint has started, there are several points that need to be considered. So no changes should be made to endanger the goal of the sprint. You don't want to make any major changes to the requirements while you are working on a sprint. Do that in between sprints. Quality should only increase, and the product backlog should be refined and updated accordingly, and its scope must be clarified in such a way that the product owner can understand. It may also be renegotiated if possible. Now, Scrum is not perfect. It definitely has some downsides. One issue that I have with it is that there is a lack of documentation when it comes to Scrum. I am someone who is very thorough in the way that I want things presented, and this lack of documentation is incredibly detrimental, especially whenever you are looking at something in the future and you are like, why did we make this decision 7 months ago? So it also has issues of lack of experience that can really hinder the Scrum problem, and there's also module integration issues that can occur where each module may function extremely well, but it may not play very well with other modules. Regardless, Scrum is an effective technique that will help us design each part of the system, and by taking Scrum and adjusting it accordingly, we can divide our project into much smaller, more obtainable objectives. And so the character creator, for instance, is not going to be created in a single sit down developer session. It's simply way too big. And this iterative approach means that each iteration should yield a higher quality piece of the product. It's also easier to verify that the code is actually working at the end during after you've written it during the same sprint as opposed to 3 sprints ago. So that is a major part of each of the sprints accordingly. If you need to dive into the details of Scrum in more detail, there is there's the official scrum.org website that you can go to and obtain the official documentation, which is actually the second reference in the third reference, excuse me, in this list of sources here. And I appreciate your time today, and I hope that this methodology will help us to create a very useful product and a very high quality product. Thank you.